We've always been tinkerers ever since day one, and we've always wanted to be our own boss, and it's mostly just because, it's like every other musician about there. Nobody wants to be told what to do. Everybody's got a pretty independent thought process going on. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of musicians out there when somebody has said, hey, I want you guys back on stage in 5 minutes or you're fired. They're all sitting there thinking, okay, we quit. That's just the way it is in this industry. Certainly I remember thinking that when I was playing every night.
Yeah, we wanted to be our own boss. We wanted to have a great company. Yeah, a little bit about our history. We met in college and we were both guitar players. During the summer of 1976, when they had the bicentennial, he was on the road with his band. And my sister was the sound engineer at Knott's Berry Farm here in Orange County, so she got me a job as a stagehand. He came back and we started hitting up the acts that would come through there to repair their stuff, and then we started hitting them up that we could build this stuff. And we actually started in the wooden case business, and we started hitting up local stores. And that's where we ran into Doug Brown, the B and SKB.
And I was in college at the time, and I was studying polymer studies in the engineering department. And so I had a little bit of an engineering background, and Dave came to me, and Doug came to me and said, hey, do you think you could figure out how to make these plastic cases that everybody's asking for? And I remember as a little kid having a toy vacuum forming machine back when they didn't have safety warnings on toys, and you could generally have a little oven on it, things that could burn your house down, and it was a machine that inspired our first vacuum forming machine. So we went back to my dad's garage, we worked on this machine, and within just a month or two we were vacuum forming cases. We were using
$200 we spent on it.
We spent $200 on it, and that was all that we had. It wasn't that we probably should have spent more. We used the intake manifold on Dave's 240Z for our vacuum pump because we couldn't afford a vacuum pump, and that worked really well. And for our heating elements, we used a bunch of cowl rods out of old dishwashers that we had straightened out, and that was our first machine.
We made our mold out of plaster, and we took it out and we got orders. Our first order was actually from John McGraw, who was the junior buyer at Coast Wholesale at the time before he wound up being president of Command Music. And another guy that we used to sell to was Doug Brown, who owned one of the premier music stores in Orange County, which was California Music. So we got together and then we became SKB, and we had a fire.
Yeah, that was an interesting day. The machine that I was talking about as a little kid had an oven that would cook the plastic on this side, and then it had a frame that would flip over and form the plastic over the molds on the other side. So that's how we designed our machine. The problem is, and I joke about it because I had attention deficit disorder before anybody knew what it was. I had the plastic on this side, and then I started thinking about all the different elements of the business and completely forgot I was running this machine. I walked out of the building, and when I came back, there's smoke coming out of it and flames, and Dave's going, Steve, what are you doing? And I thought, uh-oh. I grabbed a fire extinguisher the size of a beer can and went running in there to put out the flames, and wound up just pushing all the material up over the top of me. And I came out on flames, and I was really glad that Dave happened to have a garden hose that day just right next to him, and he put me out. And they called it the pig hole.
Right.
We didn't actually name it the pig hole.
We didn't name it that. It said it like in a big, ugly, like graffiti thing right on the outside of it. It was a pretty horrible place to work.
It was a plywood shed that was not designed for human occupancy. It was basically, it was something that you'd put somebody in to torture them for like I don't know, violating their parole or something in prison.
Yeah, and then add a very hot machine in there.
We measured, it was 120 degrees in there.
All the time.
And I can remember one day, it was just so unbearable. I just took the skill saw and just walked up to the wall and just made a window. It was probably 2 foot by 6 foot, this beautiful window, but it at least made it bearable in the pig hole.
Did you ever spend the night in the place?
Yeah.
I did.
Lots of times. Yeah, we spent the night at the factory many times in the early days. Certainly, like, there was nobody that was like forcing this hardship on us, but certainly we endured it. Yeah, I wouldn't wish those working conditions on anyone. You know, the fact that the place lit on fire like a bomb, I mean, it was an accident waiting to happen. It's just we were 22 years old. We were way too naive to realize how dangerous it was in there.
We're lucky we didn't burn your mom's house down.
Really lucky, yeah.
So was your mom.
Yeah. We wound up with a big pile of rubble and started all over again. But when we started all over again, we had a lot better molds, a lot better machines. We had a fireproof design, and that's what carried us into the early years.
What's kind of interesting about these machines, these two here, they're pretty old. Steve and I actually built both of these. We looked at pictures of commercially made machines, and Steve designed this thing, and we actually cut every piece of steel in this thing 22, 23 years ago, welded it together, wired it, did the plumbing, the whole bit. We've basically started this company with no money, and so we had to get really good at making things and making them inexpensively. As we grew the company and we made more money, we were able to go out and buy the best that could be bought. But this machine here is kind of our humble beginnings, and it still runs 24/7. Was our first vacuum former, and we cut up and welded every piece of it together. Okay, so he's pulling the mold out of the sheet. The hot sheet's in the oven. It should just about be ready to go. The cold sheet's been loaded, ready to go into the oven. So now you can see the hot sheet. It's sagging down because it's really hot, but it's not all the way melted. And then this box, we call this a pre-draw box. It comes up and it's gonna pull the plastic into 2 bubbles, which help us to get a really nice uniform wall thickness. You can see it's sucking down the bubbles there, and then the next thing that's gonna happen, he's gonna lower the molds into that and the bumpers come out. Okay, here they go. And down comes the box. And you can see down here, it sucked the plastic around the molds. Now it goes through its cooling cycle.